What's up, everybody? It is Monday, July 6th, and we've got the NBA tip-off show here on WagerTalk TV. So who else to bring on than my panel of experts? Rob Veno, Tony Finn, Skee Profit, all joining me. We are a week closer to this NBA restart in Orlando. We're continuing to get news. We're continuing to see odd shifts, so we are here to break it all down. Let's start. Skee, I'll get to you first. You have the honor, my friend. What was your weekend like, July 4th? Did you do anything fun? And what are you looking at now as we're now a week closer to this NBA restart as we start to gear up for Orlando?
I didn't do too much of anything besides just eat some food, gamble, and enjoy. There was a lot of people on the strip. There's most people I've seen out here.
Interesting.
That's all I've done. And NBA, just waiting on the Lakers, Clippers, final rosters, seeing what we're going to get for that Western Conference Finals.
I'll let Tony rebuke that. Tony, what's been the vibe like in Casa de Fin over the last couple of weeks as we're continuing to gear up for this restart?
Well, I know that that Vegas or the powers that are in Vegas are not going to like this, but I'm staying away for the Strip. That is swimming a river full of snakes right now. As careless as people are down there, they come. People go to Vegas and believe that crap that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. No, you can carry that. You can. You can leave Vegas with what you got.
That goes back with you, right?
Okay, now let's talk basketball. I wish I could agree with Skee. I wish I could agree with Skee, and we're going to have a Lakers Clippers Western Series Finals, and we may. And that if there's a division, a conference that's going to be the two chalk, I think that's the one. I think the Eastern, with the news of Oladipo, with some guys like Hayward who are going to miss some conditioning, obviously miss some conditioning for this baby. We don't know when he's going to stay out of the bubble. Right now, the baby's scheduled born in the first two games that Boston plays. Everything will be fine. He'll be played for the playoffs. But listen, the East is wide open. You miss Oladipo. Indiana's out in my. They're out of, at least they've moved way down the list on possibilities as far as futures go. But I'm going to stand firm with what we talked about last week. I think this is the year that we see some strange, we already have seen strange things, but I think we'll see some strange things on the court.
Yeah, Rob, I do think we're starting to reach that point. We're kind of in no man's land. Schedule's out. We've seen a little bit of line movement. We still don't have a full finalized roster for every team, but we can start to formulate some plans on how we're going to approach this restart in Orlando.
Yeah, no doubt, Jerry. We saw a couple of, teams shut down yesterday, right? Sacramento shut down, Milwaukee shut down. Until they take off for Orlando, there'll be no more basketball there. A couple of positive tests in each situation. Brooklyn was the team, guys, that was just hit the hardest, right? Brooklyn really, I think we talked about them last week, too, as far as 8th place goes. There's really no competition over there in the East because Washington has to start from so far back. But I think there was a future bet on which one of the two teams would finish 8th, Orlando or Brooklyn. I think you could safely assume it's going to be the Nets now, with all the personnel defections that they've had over the course of the last couple of weeks. They're talking about signing another big man to replace DeAndre Jordan. Who knows who that might be? I'm not really sure on that one, but there's been a lot of that, small individual news that, aside from Gordon Hayward, Mike Conley's another guy who's going to leave the bubble to see the birth of his first child when that occurs. So Utah will be a little shorthanded at that point. Although during the season, I think we blamed Mike Conley for a lot of Utah's futility during the season. So, whether or not he's a positive or a negative, it remains to be seen. But there have been a lot of little things going on.
Skee, actually, we didn't talk about the Nets recently. I think the restart for them is a fascinating handicap. I mean, Sean Marks basically came out and said, Jacques Vaughn, it doesn't matter wins and losses. We're not going to grade you on that, which is basically my way of thinking he's screwed no matter what they do. They can go 8-0 and win the title, and Jacques Vaughn still might not be the head coach. What's your take on this Nets team as they're entering this bubble with a lot of uncertainty?
It's not much to like over there in Brooklyn. I'll just say that. Dinwiddie,
the pizza
health concerns, Jordan. Yeah, it's not really much to like at all. So, I didn't take too many wagers as far as futures for the East, so I'm not too concerned. But it looks for sure like Orlando, then Nets. I wouldn't count the Nets out. It's a lot of young guys on there who want to play.
Yeah.
They're probably still going to play hard, but it's an interesting handicap for sure.
I think Tony, the Nets are probably might be the most volatile team in this restart, because if, like Skee said, these young guys come out and play hard, those odds are going to shift quick, because right now I would assume they're being one of the most undervalued teams in the field because of all the issues.
Yeah, and you have just barely breached the surface on the issues that are happening in Brooklyn, and again, that's essentially a sideshow in my orbit. What Brooklyn's going to do, what they're not going to do, because they are not going to do much. No Durant. We knew Durant wasn't going to play. Irving's going to play. The questions around Dinwiddie and Allen, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nice story. Nice, good news for the Brooklyn fans and the New York area. But for the most part, we need to see Durant. Brooklyn's another year away from, even next year they'll be fun to watch. But we'll see who's going to coach. Is it going to be Skee? Will Skee coach the Brooklyn Nets and be able to give his best effort against the Lakers when they play? Right?
Oh,
yeah.
They do play the Lakers. I think they're on their schedule during this restart, Skee. And little Nets late. That's going to be a big line, I would imagine.
Yeah, it should be.
Nope. Yeah, well,
I don't think you can make that.
They're not going to try.
We'll see. I don't know. I know I'll probably be rolling with the Lakers. I'm not going to be rolling with the Nets. That's probably not I didn't have to tell you guys that.
Yeah.
Okay. Next week I wear my Mets jersey. Seaver, Ryan, 69 Miracle.
I tell you what, the baseball show. I'm not sure. I think we got KBO coming up after this, but the baseball show. There's some interesting stuff happening in New York with the Tanaka stuff over the weekend, but I don't want to get too much into the Mets. Yeah. We're going to talk more about the Nets on this show. Rob, I'll give you the last word on Brooklyn. Besides the pizza, is anything good happening on that side of the East River?
Yeah, just to piggyback on Tony real quick, don't leave out Jerry Kuzman and John Matlack from that team. Tommy Agee, Cleon Jones.
Didn't Kuzman play for the Lakers? Never mind.
But the Nets, Jared, last year it was a bad matchup when they opened up with Philadelphia, right? It's a small team. They got no size. They need all their guards to be on the floor and productive against a team like Philadelphia, which had such size. They go out and get DeAndre Jordan, and now they're back to square one. Karis LeVert, a couple other potential scoring guards, but a small basketball team. And if they do finish eighth, your first round matchup is with Milwaukee, and that just doesn't bode well for the Brooklyn Nets. So, as hard as they tried to add some size to that team without Jordan opting out, I don't know where they're going to come with a replacement here. I'll just start real quick here on the 76ers, and then I'll go back to you because I know you like them a little bit in the Eastern Conference, but it was interesting to me to read an article here in Philadelphia where Shake Milton really
I saw that.
wants to take the reins of this basketball team, louder voice than Ben Simmons as far as who's going to run the show here. Shake Milton at SMU, just a tremendous basketball player. When they drafted him, I liked the pick. He spent a couple of years or a little time in the G League. But now he's making his mark, and he's very vocal about it. So this could be a different look for the 76ers if, in fact, he's allowed to handle the ball and lead the team on offense. I don't know if Ben will take it from him. We'll see how that, we talked about the Tobias Harris quote where he said they lacked chemistry to start the season, and now they have that chemistry. Probably have to prove it. I know a lot of the talk radio here in Philadelphia doesn't buy that. They don't believe that Tobias Harris quote where now all of a sudden they have chemistry. You have to prove it in this city anyway. But we're going to see. I just thought Shake Milton was a very interesting development.
No, I agree. And Skee, I know you've been against the Sixers cap. We brought it up a couple times. So I'll give you a chance to rebuke here because I am one of those people that thinks moving Ben Simmons inside is going to help this team defensively. In that being said, there has to be someone like Shake Milton that does take the reins. Does that situation change your mind at all about Philly, or is it Brett Brown all the way as the fade?
Philly could be okay in the 8 games before the playoffs start, but in the playoffs, I just don't believe in it. I think when the game is in crunch time, Ben Simmons, he hurts the team just being on the floor. Brett Brown hurts the team being the coach. So, I mean, they could excel in like some of these regular games or maybe even the first round, but I don't really see them going much farther than that. It's just, I mean, I understand the East is pretty wide open.
Yeah.
But I'm just not a believer in those two things. Ben Simmons in the clutch and Brett Brown as a coach.
Good stuff. Let's get into some of these, team news, roster news. We saw the big news over the weekend was Victor Oladipo officially deciding to opt out. I do think that was the right move for him in the future. It wasn't a COVID situation. It was an injury situation, that ruptured quad that happened back, I believe it was in January. And this is a team in the Pacers that have been playing relatively well, even without Victor Oladipo, for quite some time, Tony. Not much move in the futures market. They're still 29-1 to win the East, as far as I can see here in the East Coast books. What are your thoughts overall on the Pacers? By all accounts, it looks like they're going to be playing pretty hard during this restart, but they'll be without Oladipo.
I think they're going to play hard. I think they'll play hard. They did, again, as we've talked about, play the majority of their season without Oladipo already. And while they have suffered offensively because Oladipo's injury, they've been solid defensively. In fact, well, I mentioned last week that if they could get Oladipo's 24, 27 points a game back, that they have to be taken seriously. Without him, I think Skee, we talked about it earlier or last week, that without Oladipo, Indiana's in a tough spot to advance. So they can show their fans they're ready for next year, that they're serious, that they're going to play hard regardless of who's on the bench or dressed. But when it comes to the East, there's 5, 6, 7 teams I like a lot better to advance.
Yeah, Rob, I think Indiana probably is the toughest cap, besides Brooklyn, which we got to, in the East, because I think the talent's there, but I agree, the youth, maybe the inexperience, and now maybe being a guy short, maybe they're just the odds are dangling in your face. They want you to bet the Pacers at 29-1, but it might just be a year away from them being really a team that can contend.
Yeah, I'd agree, Jared. I think the desire is there. The desire to win, because we, saw last week when Nate McMillan and Kevin Pritchard both came out and said this team is going to be ready. They felt like this team was ready to play. I wouldn't challenge their heart, but I would challenge, the personnel on the floor at this point in time, because not only do you lose Oladipo now at shooting guard, but remember Jeremy Lamb is gone too. Yeah. So the top 2 shooting guards are gone for that team. Malcolm Brogdon at the point is nice. He's back healthy. He'll cleared the coronavirus deal and he'll play, but shooting guard is going to hurt this team, guys. You look up and down that roster, that depth chart, and wonder who can shoot the ball. I mean, it's probably going to go to Aaron Holiday, and behind that, I just don't know. So I would think that that's a big void to fill, that shooting guard position, especially in the playoffs. Skee was just talking about not trusting Ben Simmons to shoot the ball. Ben Simmons not trusting himself to even shoot the ball. In the playoffs, a 2 guard's got to shoot the basketball, and you got to have one that can shoot it. And Indiana just sorely lacks in that area right now. Front line's nice. Miles Turner has put in a lot of work. But again, I'm going to go back to what I'm most fascinated by that opening round series against the Miami Heat, and that'll be the Jimmy Butler, TJ Warren matchup, which to me could be every bit as good as Russell Westbrook against Russell Westbrook and Pat Beverly, except at a forward position.
It's like the Jets against the Sharks. Speaking of shooting guards that could have an impact, I'm assuming Landry Shamet is going to play for the Clippers, Key, even though he did test positive. We heard that news over the weekend. He's a guy that has shot it very well from 3 for the Clippers. I think this LA handicap is fascinating. I feel like it's going to be what we're talking about, not only during the restart, during the regular season, the 8 games, but also well into the postseason as well. What's your take on Shamet and the rest of this Clippers roster, as really I think they gear up to figure out a way to beat the Lakers in a 7-game series?
My thoughts on Shamet, I mean, he's a great shooter. He's like their JJ Redick now for their team, right? So, I mean, that's a big loss. That's a guy who's going to spread the floor out. I mean, not that they don't have other people who can shoot, but I think that's a big loss. What you really want to hear is what is Lou Will doing? If Lou Will is out, they don't stand a chance. If he's in, they have a chance. And if Dwight Howard is in, I still think the Lakers are pretty good. And if he's out, Lakers could probably struggle. So it's interesting to see. I'm just, like I said, I'm more interested in the Lou Will news.
It is interesting because I still feel, and this is why I think these individual game matchups are so fascinating, Tony, because on one hand, we're trying to cap these teams as they are, but in reality, it's kind of hard to do that. We almost have to view everybody as questionable every day, which is a very hard thing to do from a handicapping perspective.
I have some strong feelings, and I like some matchups. If we were to play basketball tonight, I'm quite confident that the picks I have on my list, my short list right now, are I'm on them. In fact, I'm going to push in and push in hard.
Utah Jazz.
Well, listen, I definitely like some totals. We'll talk about totals maybe a little later in the show with the Utah Jazz. I believe they're going to play faster without Bogdanovich and Conley. Listen, this team, guys like Dieng are going to get more minutes, and these guys want to score. Think about what this team could do if they focused a little more offensive. We've seen Conley's a veteran; he can score. You know what the rest of that team can do. But let's talk about shooters. You're talking about it. Philadelphia. I believe you guys have talked a little bit. I believe Al Horford's going to come off the bench. I believe Shake Milton's going to start. I believe you're going to get a Josh Richardson, Toby, a Harris, an Embiid, and Milton. And here's the deal, guys. Philadelphia, if Brown does this, they have played 0 minutes. These 5, 0 minutes as a starting lineup. 0, none. So is 8 games enough for this team to, as our expert from Las Vegas, Mr. Skee Prophet, would say, are they going to have the cohesion, the rhythm, the confidence as a group of 5 to know how not to play basketball, but how to play together? That's the question.
I'm fascinated by the totals, Rob. I think the totals, I think, and obviously we're going to see some blowouts, I'm sure. But to me, the totals on any given night, I could see them being 30 or 40 points off than what the number is. Because we really don't know personnel. We don't know styles. We don't know how many minutes these guys are going to get. I could absolutely see a massive fluctuation in totals. And, you know better than me, volatility is the sharp bettor's best friend. So to me, the totals really could be where we make our money early on in this restart.
Yeah, Jared, personally, it's the first bet I went to, and I'll hitch myself right to Tony's wagon. He said it already. First play I made was Utah, New Orleans over. Yeah. During the regular season, if I'd have seen that 219.5 while we were doing the show and the season was still going, Joe Ranieri would have been up there, and we'd have been over 219.5.
I'll give him a call. I see him every morning.
And what happened to me was I made the play. And then I watched an interview with JJ Redick about 4 nights ago.
Yeah.
Who says, here's what you can expect from us.
Fascinating.
Sloppy basketball.
Yeah.
Sloppy. Now, sloppy could mean a lot of things, guys. It doesn't mean
be on the
shots
defensive
aren't going to
rotations
go in.
too.
It could be just be slow defense and a lot of points. To me, these games to start off with are no more than glorified summer league games where you see a lot of points produced anyway. So laziness on defense is what I consider to be the sloppy end of it. I think all these guys can shoot. New Orleans has so many scores. Utah, if they go faster, they have scores. So to me, 219.5 was almost, before I heard the interview, I shook a little bit, but it looked like
not going to be anywhere there.
Ceiling.
Yeah. It's not going to be. It's going to close at 223.
And the final score could be somewhere in the 240s. Skee, I can speak from experience. The last thing to go is the jump shot. And if they're wide open and if the defensive rotations aren't there and these guys are getting layups or they're getting 10-footers, I don't see scoring being an issue. And I don't see the rust having an effect on the offense. So to me, it could be a very fascinating handicap early with these totals. I could see a massive fluctuation to the overs early on.
Yeah, well, Rob said it pretty well. I mean, the totals were like 235 or 240 when we were watching when we stopped off. So that's like 20-point difference. I could definitely see it going over. I never really want to bet a New Orleans Pelicans game under. All they want to do is run and gun. So I could go with that. That could be like consensus.
Well, it's funny because just to piggyback on that, Skee, with your Clippers Lakers opening night game, total 218. All of the totals for the Lakers and the Clippers were in the 220s earlier this season. Now none of them got there, but it is interesting to see such a drop off with the totals, despite not really knowing what the styles are going to be. I mean, 218 in the hook seems pretty low for an NBA game with two offenses as prolific as the Lakers and the Clippers. I know those are defensive teams, but they have adjusted those totals pretty significantly to the downside.
Yeah, and like you said, two more defensive teams, and it should be more like, I mean, I know it's the first game, but it should be more like playoff energy at least. And I think like the first game back, if anything's going to struggle, I think it's going to be offense, honestly. So I think it should be a lower scoring game, in my opinion, if I had to pick right now.
Interesting. Guys, any thoughts on that Lakers-Clippers total? 218 in the hook. I was looking back today. All the other Lakers-Clippers totals this season, 3 games, 223, 224, somewhere in that range. So pretty significant drop in that total right out of the gate without really knowing much about the rosters or the style.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Tone. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Get him. Get him, Robbie.
Just real quick, I was just going to say, I think the decrease, the odds makers' decrease in these totals has everything to do with this being neutral floor that nobody's ever played on before. I mean, and I just don't know. It's hard to gauge right now how big of an effect that will play. Are these rims going to be so foreign to these guys, especially after they've practiced on them for a couple of weeks here? I just think that they'll be okay as far as scoring points is concerned, and maybe the adjustment made by the odds makers here for this 8-game stretch, at least for the lines that we're looking at, the first 13 games, I think it might have been overcompensation, and we can get to, when's the last time you saw the Wizards? I think they're down to like 228.5 against Phoenix.
And they got a lot of guys missing too. So how much is it? Bertan's not playing. Bradley Beal maybe opting out. Obviously, we know John Wall's not there. Do you think? And that actually is an interesting point into another handicap. Whereas maybe players like whoever's going to replace Davis Bertans in the lineup, well, maybe that guy wants to push a little harder. So I'm curious if guys being out of the lineup really will affect the totals that much, where maybe their defensive rotations aren't as strong. It could push it to the over.
Well, that scenario with the Wizards, yes, it's going to affect the total because Bertans is going to shoot it if he's open for a second, and it doesn't matter what the shot clock is. Bradley Beal is going to put up 1,000 points on the board, so those two players will affect that total.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to tie a bow on these totals? I really think the most movement we're going to see from game to game will be in the totals.
Without question. And now we're going to see it. We've already seen some movement in point spreads, such as the Philadelphia and Indiana game with no Oladipo, right? With Philadelphia, we talked about that a little bit. Philly moved already to a -5, as much as -5 in some places, some shops. But who benefits, guys? Who benefited from this 3-month layoff? And if they benefited, if I tell you they benefited, or you tell me they benefited, how did they benefit? And what does it affect? Does it affect the point spread? Does it affect the matchup? Does it affect the total? And these are the $1 million or the win or loss questions for us as touts and cappers to solve. And that's what makes all this really fun and makes us either successful. It makes us winners, losers, dopes, or freaks.
All the above, I would say. I think we've got all the above on this call. Rob, I think we talked about this earlier during we did a practice run of the show before we got on here. But I want to bring this point up again because I think it's fascinating. There are some games on the board where it's game 2 for these teams. And there are some games on the board where a team that is opening against a team that's playing a second game. The Raptors-Lakers game is the one that comes to mind. Are you looking to play kind of like a look-ahead line in the NFL? Do you think you can find an edge? And I'm assuming the answer is yes, because there's always an edge to be found somewhere. But the fact that there's a second game on the board already before we have any information about game 1, I would say that's a content boost from the books. They're just trying to get handle. But for us as bettors, I think there's some opportunities, as they would say, to exploit.
Yeah, the other game that fits that exact situation, Jared, would be the Utah-Oklahoma City game. Oklahoma City will be in their first game. Chris Paul and company coming out against Utah in their second game. There's always the back and forth of whether or not having a game at hand on these neutral courts will benefit the team that's got one already. So in that case, you would, favor Lakers, Jazz, I guess, under that scenario in their second time out. Or, does the Laker-Clipper game take so much out of those two teams because it's a battle that the Lakers come back a little fatigued in their second game? And Toronto, a team that really, from all indications, guys, is another one. We haven't talked about them much today, but very ready to go. I mean, right down to guys like OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I saw that.
worked his tail off and can be a real good producer here for this team. So I think if we can find the advantage in the individual team, that's where you go get it. I don't think the situation necessarily, but the individual team. Oklahoma City in that game, I think I would lean, Jared, to tell you the truth, because I just think Chris Paul will have that team fired up, ready to go. And just not so sure about the Utah Jazz at this point in time.
Yeah, Skee, what's your take on these second games already being booked, especially those teams that are playing first games against teams playing games number 2? I think it's a fascinating handicap with these lines already being available.
I agree, and I agree with what Rob just said. Some young guys on that OKC team, we talked about some of these young guys coming back, being ready, and Chris Paul is a great leader, and everybody except for Tony has been insured to Utah Jazz. So I'm included. I don't trust them. So I would have to lean towards OKC. And I will say, go ahead, Tony.
No, anybody that can be motivated by Chris Paul, I have questions about.
He's going to be burning it.
If I see Chris Paul in the streets, I'm running. It's like, oh, shit. This somebody's going to throw me under the bus. I'm going.
What about if you see Carlton, the lookalike for Chris Paul these days?
Oh, yeah, no, I party with him. I'll have a beer with him, but not Chris Paul.
Hey, on the note of maybe like the first games, take something out of the teams, like that Lakers Clippers game. I mean, I'm pretty confident that New Orleans will be ready for their second game.
They have to be, yep.
Versus the Clippers. So I would like that too.
That's the biggest spread on the board too right now. I see 5 in the hook. That's the biggest dog I see on the board right now. I mean, that could be the biggest value on the board. Say the Clippers come out, play really well in that Lakers game, and then all of a sudden kind of fall flat a little bit. That's a big number right now to be laying.
Yeah, I like it. And
you're
if I had
to just, and I'm going to interrupt you because I like to, Skee. But you're going to see. Here's what you're going to see. These second games, the numbers that are up. And this is where we are supposed to be able to advise, that we're supposed to know, at least have some idea, and that is, I'm going to tell you right now, these lines will move. And like anything in life, we are only as good as our last pick, and these guys are only as good as their last game. And if the Clippers come out and blow the Lakers off the court, okay, this line with the Clippers, New Orleans, is not going to be just and New Orleans lose.
It'll be like
8. 7. It's going to go 8. So if you know and you believe these things that we're telling you, or you have your own ideas, then jump these lines now. If you really believe that, the scenario I just laid out is true, then damn, get the 5, and then when it goes to 8, get the other side. You got a 3-point middle, side out, bam.
That's how I'm playing it, and that's exactly how I'm going to play that Raptors-Lakers game. Because if I'm in Skee's boat, where I think the Lakers are going to come out early and put the hammer down on the Clippers, then absolutely you're going to bet the Lakers minus 3.5 against Toronto, because that line's going to be 6, right?
It's going. It is. And then we're going. I think.
And then you come back on the other side, you take the Toronto full 6, and then guess what? You have no chance to lose money that night except for the juice. And that's
you beat juice, and you have a chance to catch 20-1. I'll take it. Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
And guys, there's an individual team situation. I mean, when Skee brought it up, it's a great point. I mean, I would love for that Clippers New Orleans line to get bigger off of a Clipper blow up, because you couldn't get the truck here fast enough to give me the money to go bet the Pelican side. We talked about it last week, right? If Memphis wins 2 games, New Orleans has to go 6-2. So they have to play every game like it's their last, which they will. And they've got, in my estimation, they've got the youth, they've got the depth to do it. So the Clippers are not necessarily under that sort of, they're not backed into that corner.
And they've got guys who are unsure about if they want to play.
Sure.
So that early motivation, I think, is going to be a monster fact. I think the teams it's funny because I'm looking at the strength of schedule and I'm like, oh, this team has an easy schedule. They're facing teams at the bottom of the barrel. Those are the teams that might be the most motivated. Those might be the toughest matchups for these teams. So the Sixers and the Pelicans with these easy schedules, those teams are all fighting for the postseason. So again, we've got 2 more weeks of shows where we're not going to have actual real games to digest. We've got 2 more weeks of kind of prep shows, and I would not be shocked if we see a ton of movement between now and then. All right, I want to go around the horn one last time before we wrap up, because all you guys are kind of got your hands in different things right now. Skee, I'll start with you. What are you looking at over the next couple weeks? Not basketball. Promote something else you're doing on the network on Wager Talk as we gear up here for what I think is going to be one of the most exciting falls in the history of sports.
Well, outside of that, I mean, I'm looking forward to WNBA. I'm very excited for WNBA, and I want to start doing some kind of content or show about that. So, anybody who's been with me last year playoffs, I mean, we were 70% in the playoffs.
Yeah, you were racking up winners.
Looking forward to doing something like that again this year. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, if anyone wants a good follow for WNBA or ponies, Skee's your guy. Does a great job with all that stuff. Tony, what you got cooking in the blender over there, brother?
Just winners. Nothing but winners.
That's right.
Listen, I'm working hard as I always do. This is the time of year I dig deep and hard to get my football Jones fix 1, 2, 10 times, and I have a little party tonight. It's Monday Night Football night. You know, it's the first
nice.
First Monday in July. Lots of vodka, lots of spicy margaritas, lots of
Nice.
a lot of football food tonight. Football food, you know, not summer food. But most importantly, my focus right now would be on baseball. Truthfully, it should be on baseball, and it's not. But I'm also working a little bit on that. We are getting there, and I say...
You got to get the testing right, but other than that, we're getting there.
Take the Nationals over the Yankees game one. That's my free pick. And as we talked about, I already played the over in that New Orleans and
nice.
At the New Orleans Jazz game week or opening night, July 30th. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, I know you got golf
winners.
going on. What else is going on over there in the world of Veno?
Yeah, let me pump the Wager Talk Tuesday college football show. Myself, Drew Martin, and Ralph Michaels. We've been at it now for 12 weeks. This will be, I think, the 12th show.
I've been waiting for my invite to that show.
Come on along.
Wait, hold it. I can't just walk in. That's not. Well, it is me, but I won't.
You're not invited, President.
All right, I'll wait for my.
But the show, we've been going at it for a while now, guys, providing all kinds of content, off-season coaching changes. We're into schedule breakdowns right now. We'll get a little more into detail when we get lines on individual games, futures, and stuff. But tomorrow we cover the Pac-12 North as we move on through conferences. We'll get to those teams. Major League Baseball, I am diving into now the last 4 or 5 days, trying to figure out what the best way to approach the baseball season is. In my estimation, it's been bullpens for the last 20-plus years. I'll probably look that way, too. And Skee, God bless you, handicapping the WNBA, because I think they have more defections and opt-outs in the WNBA than they do in the NBA. So keeping track of those rosters, a little bit difficult. I'll have to follow that. Make me some money, buddy.
Skee, you're not married, right?
No.
Do you have a harem? After you get off the show, do you go visit your harem? Do you have a harem?
No.
Then how the hell are you attempting to handicap women? You know nothing about women.
Skee, I have a feeling knows his way around the WNBA court a little bit. I'll close with this. I am absolutely destroying the links. I've hit 4 straight 5%ers in golf. Victor Hovland gave me a scare over the weekend on the back 9, but he did get it done in the top 20, and that was our 4th straight golf winner. I believe, Rob, I'm not sure if you're on it with us tomorrow. But we'll have the golf show on Tuesday as we normally do, and that's always a lot of fun with KIV and the gang, and Nick does a great job with that as well, and so does Andy Lang. So that's a lot of fun. But this is our NBA tip-off show. We've got 1 more week, or I think two more weeks of kind of ramp up, and then we'll really start to dive into this stuff. But hopefully by next week, guys, we actually have finalized rosters, right? I do think. That's kind of the finalization of the rosters, right? By next week, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So hopefully we'll really have something to dive into, and I do expect a lot of movement between now and then. Ski Profit, Tony Finn, Rob Veno. I'm Jared Smith. This is the NBA Tip-Off Show, and we'll see you next week here on WagerTalk TV.